Hello there, everybody. My name is S. Khan. Today we are going to be talking about the theoretical aspects of CSS. In the previous lecture, we have covered the basic features of CSS. With that, you'll be able to change web background color, font sizes, and text color. And as you play along with most of the features, you'll go a long way. But if you have a complicated feature, if you have a complex interaction, then you need to know the theory of CSS. And this course will suffice for that. Now, the first thing that we're going to be looking at is inheritance. Now, let's bring up the slide on inheritance. Now, as you see, we have a file, HTML file that has the inheritance in it. Now, inheritance basically means that you have a hierarchical relationship, and it's a parent-child relationship. It's a ancestor descendant relationship that you have. In the top section, we have a HTML file here. Now remember, in this lecture and in the previous lecture, all HTML files can be saved with the Notepad editor or any HTML editor using the .htm extension. And by double clicking on those, you'll be able to play with the property value features. So here we have the HTML file. Now, the next thing to look at is you have to know how a page is loaded. A page is basically loaded into memory, into the browser, when you double click on the HTML file out there. So the first thing you will see that it creates a root on the top portion. You have HTML here, and the hierarchical tree creates a root out there. Then it will create descendants, childs of it, and the first section we see we have a head. We have a head here. We have a head as we see in this section, and we have a head here. So it is a child of the root, and then we have a body. Body is under the head, so we have a child body, and underneath the body we have a heading relationship, we have a text relationship, and we have a emphasis which is of the text and the heading. So this hierarchical relationship is set up, and what that means is if heading has a property value, it has a color blue, then the emphasis will inherit that color blue or the font size that it has. If the heading has the value of color red, then emphasis will inherit the value color red and also its font sizes. So that's basically what it means. So let's look at the example of inheritance. Now let's bring up the slide on inheritance out here. Uh, Now here we have the HTML file. On the top we have the style section here. As we see the style section, and the bottom we have the HTML. On the style section, we have specified various properties. In the HTML section, we have a heading. It's called simple, and then we have a mark tag. EM means emphasis, float, example. So the emphasis will be on float. What emphasis does, it will put the uh, word float in italics or in a slightly slanted fashion. So heading, if heading has the color blue, color red, in our example here we see that heading has the color red. So EM in this case we have not specified any color value. It will inherit the color red in here. So heading will be the parent, and EM will be the child, and will inherit that color red. So you'll be able to see that when we double click on this file, uh, then the color red will be displayed out there. So let's click on inheritance file here. See, we have the heading simple, and then we have a slanted float. This is the emphasis. It has inherited the color red because it's the heading, and it's the same font size, and it has also the same as example out there. So that's basically the, the that's basically the lesson to learn, that inheritance allows you to get certain properties or values from the parent itself. Now, if we put emphasis as blue with a property blue, then floating would come out blue out there. So, in that case, there will be no inheritance. It would override it. You can go home and play around with it. It's a very important exercise. You can play around a little bit and see how it really works. Now, the next thing that we are going to be looking at is we are going to be looking at declarations out there. So let's look at declarations. Uh, declarations. Now, remember, on CSS we can have various type of declarations, and one of them is important declarations. Important declarations get the highest priority. For example, here, user important declarations. This has the highest priority, and next we have the author important declarations, then author normal declarations, and user normal declarations. The way we specify important declarations is as follows. For example, you have the style section here, and the style section will say the color colon inherit and bang important. So it is inheriting and it is important declaration. We say the background color is black and important. So important declarations will take precedence over other declarations, and it will win over any other declaration that you might have. So that's the thing to remember. The next thing we will look at is origins, and so let's look at origins out there. We have origins. Let's bring out the file. Now, style sheets may have three different origins. It can have the author, it can have the user, or it can have the user agent. Now, if the user usually gets the highest priority, uh, and author gets the lowest, the user agent gets the lowest priority out there. So you should, there's usually a default style sheet that is associated with the with the with the file, and you can see what a default style sheet looks like. It's usually used for a legacy presentation. If we don't have any style sheet specified, then the default style sheet will take precedence. Let's look at what a default uh, style sheet looks like. Now, here is the default style sheet. Here we have the starting of it and black code. It will specify, what the heading, size is, for a default. For default, if you don't specify it in your document, then this is what it's going to default to. Font size for heading 1, 2 EM, font size for heading 2, 1.5, and font size for heading 3, 1.17. So basically, that's about it that you'll need to know. So we talked about origins, we talked about declarations. Now, the last thing that we'll be talking about is specificity. So let's bring up the file on specificity. Specificity basically means assigning a relative weight to your cascading style sheet. By weight, we mean a number that is calculated according to an algorithm. And let's say you have a concatenated number A, B, C, D. Now, if you have A, B, C, D, then if you have a inline style, then A will get a 1, and B will get a 0, C will get a 0, D will get a 0. So inline styles, A gets a 1, so you get 1000. The specificity is 1000 out there. So this is basically the concatenated number, and I've specified inline style for A here, and let's look at other things. B is for number of ID attributes. You get a 1 if you have number of ID attributes in your CSS style. If you have number of pseudo classes, then C gets a 1. If you have number of HTML elements, then D gets a 1 out there. Now let's look at some of the examples out there. Here we have a H2 heading, and as you see, we have a H2 heading, and we have an inline style because it is within the HTML tag. It's not in the style section out there. So it says color red. Because it is an inline style, A will be 1 and color red, and the ABCD number will become A for 1 for A, 1, 1, B for 0, D for 0, D for 0, and the specificity becomes 1000. If you have a ID attribute in your HTML tag, then B gets a 1. So here we have an ID attribute, and here we have B, which is a 1, and your ABC will become 0, 1, 0, 0, or the specificity becomes 100. Now the specificity 1000 for inline style is definitely greater than 1100, so it will win over any other thing. Now the third thing is, if you will get a 1 if you have a pseudo class a colon hover in your declaration. So here we have ABCD, and you have A gets a 0, B gets a 0, C gets a 1, and C gets a 1 here, and D gets a 0. So you have 0, 0, 1, 0, or 10. So that's how it is calculated. Now if you have HTML elements, let's say you have the declaration H1 and H2. Now D will be 2 because there are 2 HTML elements. So here we have a concatenated number. You have 0 for A, no inline style, 0 for B, no ID attributes, 0 for C, no pseudo classes, and 2 for number of HTML elements. So specificity becomes 0002 or 2 by itself. So, this is how the relative weights are calculated, and that's why we call it a cascade. You should remember that. It's very, very important. So that's all we have for the theoretical aspects of CSS. Thank you very much.